The popular girl at school got her period and stained her dress. Without a second thought, I swapped clothes with her. But when I went to buy her some pads, the cold, aloof top student who had always ignored me suddenly approached me in the aisle. "Did you find what you need? Give it to me, I'll pay." Even my sharp-tongued childhood friend, the one who loved mocking me more than anyone, looked incredibly gentle and soft in that moment. You look really pretty today." I froze in place. I actually believed my quiet kindness had finally been noticed by the people around me, until I turned around to say thank you. The two handsome boys frowned, their expressions instantly hardening as they spoke in unison. "Why is it you?" The first to react was my childhood friend, Ryder. He was leaning lazily against the metal shelves, but the moment he realized who I was, he shoved my shoulder with a careless hand. An arrogant smirk crawled back onto his face. "What the hell? What kind of phase are you going through today, trying to wear a dress like everyone else?" Ryder let out a sharp scoff, letting his eyes wander over me with blatant amusement before laughing out loud. "Are you out of your mind? You look like you're wearing a white potato sack. What kind of trash style is this? It looks hideous. Look, if you seriously don't know how to pick out a dress, just throw on a black garbage bag next time. At least that way." He leaned down slightly, lowering his face to mine. Slowly, mockingly, he whispered, "It might actually hide the ugly." My fingers tightened around the boxes of pads and heating patches in my arms. The plastic packaging crinkled loudly in the quiet aisle. Just then, a soft chuckle floated from above. It was a quiet sound, the kind of polite laugh someone lets out when they hear a stupid joke but want to keep the conversation from dying. But to me, that soft chuckle sounded like a thunderclap. It came from Wood, the boy I had spent the last 3 months desperately trying to get to notice me. I lowered my eyes, biting my lip so hard it hurt. I forced myself not to scream at Ryder, terrified that if I lost my temper like I usually did, any tiny shred of respect Wood had for me would vanish forever. But my silence only made Ryder push harder. "Wow, look at our resident drama queen. What is wrong with you today? You're actually keeping your mouth shut?" He reached out, mockingly tapping his knuckles against my forehead. "Well, you don't have a fever." His eyes drifted downward, landing on the items clutched tightly against my chest. A slow, knowing smile spread across his face. "Oh, I get it. You're on your period. I almost forgot you're actually a girl. Though, honestly, I always thought girls were supposed to look more like your desk mate to count as the real deal." I trembled with a mixture of rage and humiliation. Tears blurred my vision, turning the brightly lit store into a smear of colors. The only clear thing left was a pastel pink thermal flask suddenly thrust into my field of vision. I stared at the pale, elegant hand holding the flask. Slowly raising my head, I realized it belonged to Wood, the guy who usually treated me like I was invisible. I was too stunned to move. It took me several seconds of staring before I reached out and took the flask, my voice trembling. "Is this for me?" Wood looked down at me from his height. His eyes lingered on my red, tear-stained eyes for a fraction of a second. His throat bobbed. He looked away, his expression returning to its usual cold indifference. "Give it to Genevieve. Her cycle is coming up and I know she gets bad cramps. Inside is." "I'll give it to her," I interrupted, my heart sinking into my stomach. I clutched the flask and ran toward the registers like a coward trying to escape a battlefield. But as I stood in line to pay, I could still hear Ryder's lazy voice echoing from the back of the store, talking to Wood. "Seriously, didn't she look ridiculous in that dress? You should have seen her when we did track together as kids. She ran like a burly lumberjack." I never thought I'd see the day Paige actually squeezed herself into a skirt. I didn't turn around to see if Wood was looking at me, but I heard his quiet, dismissive reply.
"Yeah."
I walked back to the classroom with my head down, feeling completely hollow. When I pushed the door open, I didn't announce my arrival with a cheerful shout like I usually did. I didn't call out, "Hey, Genevieve, I got your stuff." I just walked quietly toward my seat. As usual, Genevieve's desk was surrounded by a crowd of popular kids. They were spilled over onto my chair, completely blocking my way. I heard one of the girls ask her, "So, Genevieve, who is it going to be? Wood, the star student, or Ryder, the varsity captain?" It was a question Genevieve got asked almost every single day. She always avoided giving a straight answer. But whenever the crowd dispersed, she would hold my hand with a sweet, reassuring smile and whisper, "Don't listen to them, Paige. Wood and I just take prep classes together. We're just friends. If you like him, you should totally go for it." But today, for some reason, my feet glued themselves to the floor. I stayed back, wanting to hear what she really thought. Genevieve offered a bright, dimpled smile, her voice dripping with playful sweetness. "Ugh, why do you guys have to ask such hard questions? Wood is amazing, but Ryder is so sweet too. It's impossible to choose. Someone laughed, nudging her shoulder. Just pick the one who treats you best. One of those handsome boys is going to end up heartbroken anyway. I stood frozen in the shadow of the doorway. I watched Genevieve twirl a lock of her hair around her finger, looking utterly helpless. But they both treat me so well. I mean, look at Ryder. He's so incredibly rude to Paige, and they've literally grown up together. But he's always so gentle and attentive with me. And Wood? Paige has been throwing herself at him for 3 months, and he won't even look her in the eye. But he treats me so differently. She let out a heavy, dramatic sigh, as if carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. There's only one of me, you know? I don't want to make a reckless decision and hurt either of them. So, I guess I'll just have to wait and see how they behave. The warning bell for the next class rang right on cue. Genevieve shrugged playfully, telling everyone to get back to their seats. When her eyes finally landed on me standing in the doorway, she pouted with slight irritation. What took you so long to buy some simple pads? The break is almost over, and now I don't even have time to go to the bathroom. I was actually planning to go fine. That'll be $20, I said, tossing the plastic bag onto her desk. I kept my eyes fixed forward, my voice completely flat. Venmo me. She didn't notice the coldness in my voice. Assuming I had simply been rejected by Wood again, she offered a few empty, rehearsed words of comfort. I ignored her. When the final bell rang at the end of the day, she tapped my shoulder with the eraser end of her pencil. Paige, I'm going out to dinner with my parents tonight, so I won't have time to finish the history essay. The usual deal. You do mine, and I'll give you a choice. Either I convince Wood to tutor you tomorrow, or I'll give Ryder a piece of my mind so he behaves himself around you. Genevieve smiled, sliding her notebook onto my desk. Make sure you copy my handwriting carefully. The teacher almost noticed last time. I didn't reach for the notebook. Instead, I stood up, swung my backpack over my shoulder, and looked her in the eye. No. There's too much homework tonight and I need to study. I have to stay up late to finish my own work. Genevieve snapped upright, her eyes wide with disbelief. Ryder hasn't been bothering you lately, so forget about him. But this is a private tutoring session with what we're talking about. Paige, don't tell me you don't like him anymore. The memory of Wood's momentary gentleness in the store flashed through my mind, leaving a dull, aching pain in my chest. But the harsh reality of why he had been gentle woke me up. Yeah, I said quietly. I walked toward the classroom door, speaking loud enough for the remaining students to hear. I don't like Wood anymore. And I don't need Ryder's fake apologies. Just as I reached the hallway, Ryder's sarcastic voice cut through the air. Wow, Paige. Look at you, talking big. Who gave you permission to act so tough? What's next? Are you going to say you're cutting ties with me? Come on, let's go. My mom made your favorite dinner tonight. Great idea, I interrupted, staring straight at him. Every word was sharp and deliberate. Cutting ties sounds perfect. Without looking at his stunned, turning pale face, I pushed past him and walked away. I didn't look at Wood once. Behind me, I heard Genevieve call out in an irritated tone. Wood, I've called your name 3 times. What are you staring at? On the walk home, I realized it had been a very long time since I had experienced such silence. Usually, my afternoons were spent either trying to find excuses to linger near Wood or dealing with Ryder walking beside me, bickering and arguing all the way to my front door. But today, the air was peaceful. It felt as though the noisy world had shrunk, leaving only me. A thought slowly bloomed in my mind. Is it possible that my value as a person doesn't need to be validated by anyone else? The thought made my steps feel lighter. I stopped to feed a stray kitten near the alley. I helped an elderly lady pick up the oranges that had rolled out of her torn grocery bag after a passing car startled her. I even guided a visually impaired woman to the entrance of the subway station. By the time I finally reached my porch, Ryder was leaning against the railing, waiting for me. Ryder looked at the dirty, white dress I was still wearing. He opened his mouth, clearly wanting to make some biting remark, but he forced himself to swallow the words. He cleared his throat, holding out a brown paper bag toward me. I got you those loaded garlic fries you love. The ones from the food truck downtown. The line was insanely long. Eat them before they get cold. The rich, savory scent of garlic and melted cheese drifted into the cool air. Ryder shoved his hands into his pockets, chewing his gum nervously, watching me out of the corner of his eye. I knew this was his way of apologizing. He was offering a bridge. Usually, I would take it, and everything would go back to normal. But this time, I didn't want to. Before I could figure out how to tell him, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a call from Genevieve. Her voice was bright and bubbling. Paige, did Ryder apologize to you yet? I remained silent. She let out a dramatic, giggling sigh on the other end. Oh my God, He's so ridiculous. I casually mentioned in our group chat that I was craving those garlic fries, and he literally went and stood in that massive line to buy them. He even brought them to the restaurant where I was having dinner with my parents. I couldn't exactly take them in front of my parents, so I told him to take them to you instead. Tell me, did he look sorry? If he wasn't nice about it, let me know. I'll stop talking to him until he learns how to behave. I didn't care about her warning. Only one word stuck in my mind. Group chat. I asked, my voice flat. What group chat? Do the three of you have a chat? There was a sudden, awkward silence on the other end. Oh, oops, Genevieve muttered, her tone turning defensive. I wasn't supposed to say that. But Paige, don't be mad. Wood was the one who. It's fine, I said quietly and hung up the phone. Before Ryder could speak, before he could offer whatever excuse he was preparing, I snatched the bag of fries from his hands and threw them directly into the trash can next to the porch. Then, I slammed the front door shut, locking it with a heavy click. 7. The silence inside my bedroom that night was absolute. I didn't open my history textbook to finish Genevieve's essay. I didn't check my phone to see if Ryder had sent any frantic texts, nor did I scroll through Wood's social media to see if he had posted another vague, moody quote about his evening. Instead, I took Genevieve's dress, the white one I had worn to cover her stain, washed it carefully by hand, dried it, and folded it into a neat square. Beside it, I placed her thermal flask. The next morning, the sky was a clear, sharp blue. I wore my own clothes. An oversized dark gray sweater, comfortable faded denim, and worn-out sneakers. No skirts, no attempts to fit into a mold that was never built for me. I looked in the mirror, brushed my hair straight back, and realized something striking. For the first time in months, my eyes didn't look tired. When I entered the classroom, Genevieve was already seated at her desk, surrounded by her usual circle. Ryder was leaning against the windowsill. Nearby, his face pale and eyes shadowed, looking like he hadn't slept a wink. The moment I stepped through the door, the room quieted down just a fraction. Ryder stood up straight, his lips parting as if to say my name. I walked right past him, without a second glance. I stopped at Genevieve's desk, placed the neatly folded dress and the thermal flask onto her table, and said in a cool, level voice, "Here's your dress." And Wood's flask. Genevieve's eyes darted nervously between the flask and Ryder. "Paige, what? About the history essay? Did you bring it?" "I told you yesterday," I replied, pulling my chair back and sitting down. "I didn't do it." A ripple of low whispers broke out among the surrounding students. Genevieve's face flushed a deep, embarrassed red. "You're joking, right?" she hissed under her breath, leaning across the desk. "Mr. Harrison checks homework in 5 minutes. If I don't turn it in, I'll get an F." "Then you should probably start writing," I said softly, taking out my own completed notebook and placing it neatly on my desk. "You have 5 minutes." "Paige, how could you be so selfish?" Genevieve whispered furiously, her sweet facade slipping for just a fraction of a second. "I promised I'd get Wood to tutor you. And I told you." I looked her straight in the eye. "I don't need your tutoring. And I don't like Wood." Just then, Wood walked through the front door of the classroom. He was wearing his crisp white uniform shirt, looking as unbothered and detached as ever. But as he walked down the aisle, his eyes naturally drifted toward Genevieve, only to freeze when he saw his thermal flask sitting casually on her desk, right next to a folded white dress. He paused. His eyes moved from the flask to Genevieve and finally to me. I met his gaze for a single second, devoid of the longing, nervousness, or hope that used to consume me whenever he was near. Then, I casually turned my head toward the blackboard, ignoring him completely. Wood's brow furrowed slightly. It was a subtle expression, but for someone as emotionally stone-faced as him, it was practically a glare. When Mr. Harrison collected the history essays, Genevieve had nothing to hand in. She tried to stammer out an excuse about feeling unwell the previous night, but Mr. Harrison, a strict, no-nonsense veteran teacher, simply gave her a 0 for the assignment and told her to sit down. Throughout the morning, Ryder tried to catch my eye at least a dozen times. During the break between second and third period, he blocked my path near the water fountain. His usual arrogant posture was entirely gone, replaced by a defensive, agitated energy. "Paige, what the hell is your problem?" Ryder demanded, shoving his hands into his pockets. "You threw the fries in the trash? Do you have any idea how long I waited in line for those?" I took a sip from my water bottle, screwed the cap back on, and looked up at him. "You didn't wait in line for me, Ryder," I said calmly. You waited in line for Genevieve. She didn't want them, so you brought her leftovers to me like I'm a stray dog waiting for scraps. Ryder choked on his words. His chest heaved, his face turning red. That's not what happened. I just thought. You thought I would be grateful. I finished his sentence for him. Because for years you've treated me like garbage, and I always laughed it off because we grew up together. You thought you could insult me, call me a potato sack, mock how I run, and then buy me a bag of food to make it go away. I was just joking, Ryder snapped, his voice cracking slightly under the pressure of the quiet hallway. You know how I talk. I didn't mean it. Well, I'm not listening to your jokes anymore, I said. I stepped around him, but he reached out to grab my sleeve. Don't touch me, I said, my voice dropping an octave, dead serious. Ryder's hand froze in midair. He looked at me, truly looked at me, as if seeing a complete stranger. The girl who used to chase after him, who used to laugh at his meanest insults just to keep the peace, was completely gone. Paige, come on. Don't be like this, he muttered, his voice suddenly sounding tiny, almost begging. My mom asked why you didn't come over for dinner yesterday. Tell your mom I'm busy, I said softly. And tell her I won't be coming over anymore. I walked away, leaving him standing alone in the corridor. From the corner of my eye, I saw Wood standing near the staircase, landing, holding a stack of test papers. He had seen and heard the entire interaction. His dark eyes were fixed on me, heavy with a complicated, unreadable emotion. I didn't care to figure out what it was. Without the dead weight of trying to please people who held me in contempt, my life suddenly had immense amounts of free time. I used to spend hours sitting in the library pretending to study, just so I could catch a glimpse of Wood reading near the window. I used to spend my afternoons at the track bleachers, enduring Ryder's loud taunts while waiting to hand him a towel after his practice. Now, I spent my afternoons in the school's art room or running on the outdoor track by myself, not to impress anyone but because I actually loved running. Before Ryder started making fun of my stride when we were 12, calling me burly and lumberjack, I had been the fastest sprinter in my middle school. I had buried that passion for years out of shame. On a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks after the dress incident, I was at the track in my athletic clothes, tying my laces. Coach Miller, the head track coach who had been trying to recruit me for 2 years, walked over with a clipboard. Still just jogging for fun, Paige? Coach Miller asked, a warm smile on his face. Or, are you finally ready to join the regional relay team? We lost our anchor runner last week, and frankly, nobody on this squad has your natural explosive power. I looked out at the red synthetic track stretched out under the afternoon sun. I'm ready, coach, I said, smiling genuinely. Put me in. Across the field, the boys' soccer team was taking a break. Ryder was sitting on the bench, drinking water, when he saw Coach Miller handing me a team jersey. He froze, the water dripping down his chin, staring at me in disbelief. He knew how much I had hated track after he mocked me. He knew he was the reason I had stopped competing. And now, watching me proudly pull the school's red and gold jersey over my shoulders, he looked as if he had been slapped across the face. Next to him, Wood was sitting on the grass, tying his cleats. Wood looked up, his gaze tracking my movement as I stepped onto the lane. Set, Coach Miller called out. I dropped into the starting blocks. My mind was completely clear. No thoughts of Wood, no thoughts of Ryder, no thoughts of Genevieve's endless mind games. Bang! I exploded forward. The wind whistled in my ears, the ground flying beneath my feet. I wasn't running away from anything anymore. I was running for myself. When I crossed the finish line in a blistering 11.8 seconds, the coach yelled in excitement and my new teammates rushed over to high-five me. In the distance, Wood stood up from the grass, his eyes pinned to my laughing, breathless face. He had never seen me smile like that, radiant, fierce, and completely unbound by anyone else's opinion. Meanwhile, Genevieve's life was slowly falling apart without her quiet assistant. Without me doing her essays and research notes, her grades tanked. Teachers who used to praise her began calling her into their offices. Furthermore, because I no longer served as her backdrop, the ugly, clumsy girl that made her look like an angel by comparison, the social dynamic around her shifted. One afternoon in the cafeteria, Genevieve sat down across from me. She looked stressed, her makeup slightly rushed. Paige, she said, trying to force her signature sweet smile, though it came out tense. Can we talk? I'm eating, I replied without looking up from my salad. Look, I know you're mad at me because of what I said that day about Wood and Ryder, Genevieve whispered, leaning in. I was just boasting to those girls. You know how popular girls are. I had to say something. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I chewed my food, swallowed, and looked at her. Genevieve, I'm not mad. You're not. Her eyes lit up with hope. Then, can you help me with the biology lab report? Wood usually tutors me, but he's been so distant lately, and I really need. I'm not mad because you simply don't matter to me anymore, I interrupted. Quietly, my tone completely flat. I don't hate you, Genevieve. I just don't care. Genevieve's smile shattered entirely. What? I don't do other people's homework. I don't listen to fake friends.
Find
someone else to play your games with. She stared at me, her cheeks burning with humiliation. You think you're so great now just because you joined a track team? Do you really think Wood or Ryder will ever like you? You're still just Paige. I know I'm just Paige, I said, meeting her eyes with calm confidence. And I like Paige fine, just the way she is. Can you say the same about yourself? Genevieve stood up, so abruptly her chair scraped loudly against the floor. Several students turned to look. Embarrassed, she turned around and ran out of the cafeteria. I continued eating my lunch in peace. That evening, as I was packing my locker to head home, a shadow fell over my shoulder. I turned around to see Wood standing there. He was wearing his dark blue jacket, leaning against the lockers with a textbook
tucked under his arm.
Up close, his sharp jawline and clear skin were just as striking as ever, but the cold, untouchable air that used to intimidate me now just felt distant and sterile.
Paige, he said.
His voice was deep, smooth, but carrying a hint of hesitation. He rarely displayed. Wood, I acknowledged politely, shutting my locker door. Do you need something? He shifted his weight, his fingers tightening slightly on his textbook.
I
noticed you didn't sign up for the advanced physics study group this semester. I took AP chemistry instead, I replied smoothly. Oh. He paused, clearing his throat. I saw your track time today. It was impressive. Thanks. I adjusted my backpack strap and made a move to walk past him. Wait, Wood said, stepping slightly into my path. I stopped and looked at him, raising an eyebrow. Wood looked down at me, his usual stoic composure cracking just a bit. That day at the store, when I gave you the flask, I delivered it to Genevieve like you asked, I said smoothly. She got it. That's not what I mean, Wood said, his brow knitting. I realized later that I shouldn't have talked to you like that, or let Ryder talk to you like that. I looked at him, feeling a strange mix of amusement and sadness. Wood, I said gently. It's fine. So we're good? He asked, a subtle sense of relief flashing across his face. No, I replied softly. It means I don't care anymore.
You don't owe me an
apology because your opinion of me doesn't affect my life anymore. You liked Genevieve. You gave her the flask. You laughed at Ryder's joke. That showed me who you were and I accepted it. That's all. Wood looked as if he had been struck by lightning. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He had been used to girls hanging on his every word, chasing his approval, interpreting his coldness as mysterious charm. He had never experienced a girl looking at him with absolute indifference. Have a good evening, Wood, I said, and walked around him into the fading autumn twilight. The regional track meet arrived 3 weeks later. It was a major event hosted at our school's stadium, bringing in athletes and spectators from 5 neighboring districts. The bleachers were packed with students, parents, and recruiters. I was anchoring the 4x100-meter relay. As I warmed up near the track, doing dynamic stretches, I noticed Ryder sitting high up in the stands alone. He wasn't sitting with his soccer teammates, nor was he with Genevieve. He just sat there, wearing an oversized hoodie, staring down at me with a desperate, hollow look. Ever since I stopped speaking to him, Ryder's demeanor at school had drastically
changed.
He was no longer the loud, arrogant varsity captain. He had gotten into an argument with Genevieve after discovering she had been texting 3 other guys from different schools simultaneously, using him solely for rides and food deliveries. When he tried to talk to me about it, I had simply closed my front door on him. Near the fence, Wood was also standing, holding a camera he had volunteered as the school photographer for the event, but his lens was almost perpetually aimed at lane 4. My lane. Runners, take your marks, the official shouted. I walked to the 4th leg zone, shaking out my legs, taking a deep breath. 3rd leg is coming around the bend. Our 3rd runner, Maya, came charging around the curve, her face pale with exhaustion, holding out the silver baton. The runner from West High was 2 paces ahead of her.
Go, Paige.
Go, the crowd roared. I began my acceleration, reaching back with my hand open. The moment the cold, aluminum baton struck my palm, I clamped down hard and surged forward. The world narrowed down to the lane in front of me. 10 meters, 20 meters. I drew level with the West High runner. She looked over in shock as I blew past her like a storm. The roar of the crowd became a deafening blur. Look at Paige. Look at that stride, the announcer screamed over the PA system. She's pulling away. 5 meters. 10 meters. I snapped my chest across the finish line tape, breaking it cleanly. First place. The stadium exploded. My teammates tackled me in a group hug, screaming and laughing. Coach Miller was jumping up and down on the sidelines like a madman. As I laughed, wiping sweat from my forehead, my eyes naturally swept past the
fence.
Wood was standing there, his camera hanging forgotten around his neck.
He was
looking at me, his chest rising and falling, his eyes filled with an undeniable, consuming regret. He finally saw the girl who had loved him for 3 months, not as a quiet ghost sitting in his shadow, but as a sun bright enough to blind him. And sitting up in the stands, Ryder had his head in his hands, shoulders shaking. Silently. He had traded gold for copper, and now he was left with nothing. That evening, after the post-meet celebration at a local pizza shop, I walked home alone under the starlight. The night air was crisp and refreshing. As I reached the path leading to my house, I saw a tall figure standing under the streetlight near my porch. It was Wood. He wasn't wearing his usual pristine school uniform.
He wore a simple black
sweater, looking surprisingly vulnerable under the pale yellow glow of the street lamp. In his hands, he held a small, beautifully wrapped box. I paused at the bottom of the steps. Wood, what are you doing here? He turned, taking a step toward me, his hands trembling slightly, a rare crack in his perfect facade. I waited for you, he said, his voice quiet. I wanted to give you this. It's a metal display case. For your relay gold. I looked at the box, then looked up into his eyes. Wood, why are you doing this? Because I was an idiot, Wood said, his voice filled with raw emotion. 3 weeks ago in that store, I saw you. I knew it was you wearing that dress, before you even turned around. But Ryder was there, and I was so used to keeping up appearances, so terrified of being seen as vulnerable or soft, that I acted like a cold bastard. He took another step closer, his eyes searching my face. I watched you these past weeks, Paige. You're brilliant, you're strong, you're beautiful when you run, when you smile. I couldn't stop looking at you.
I
haven't been able to sleep. Please give me a chance. Let me tutor you, let me take you out, let me make it up to you. I listened to him carefully. Every word he said was something the old Paige would have prayed on her knees to hear a month ago. It would have felt like a dream come true. But standing here now, hearing it felt completely hollow. Wood, I said softly, my voice filled with gentle clarity. Do you know why you like me now? He blinked, caught off guard. Because you're amazing. No. I shook my head gently. You like me now because I stopped liking you. You like me because I pulled away, because I became radiant on my own, because I became something you couldn't control or possess easily. When I was quiet, kind, and devoted to you, you didn't give me a second glance. You only noticed my value when I took it away from you. Wood's breath hitched. That's not. It is, I said firmly. I don't hate you, Wood, but I don't want a boy who only sees my worth when I walk away. I deserve someone who sees it when I'm standing right in front of him. Wood stood frozen under the streetlight. The box in his hands seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. Keep the display case, I smiled faintly. And good luck with your AP classes. I stepped past him, walked to my porch, opened the door, and stepped inside. Through the window, I watched him stand there for a long time, staring at the closed door, before slowly turning around and walking into the dark, cold night. Alone. The final chapter of my high school life unfolded like a clean, peaceful spring. Genevieve eventually transferred to another school mid-semester after her poor academic standing and fractured social reputation became too uncomfortable for her to handle. Ryder quit the soccer team captaincy and spent his senior year quiet and subdued. He wrote me a 5-page letter of apology, leaving it in my mailbox. I read it, accepted his apology in my heart, but did not reply. Some bridges, once burned, are meant to stay ash. We had grown apart, and that was okay. As for me, I broke the state high school record for the 200-meter dash in the spring finals. Offers from top university athletic programs poured in alongside academic scholarships. On graduation day, the sun was shining brightly over the campus. I stood in my red graduation gown, surrounded by my track teammates, my parents, and real friends who cared about me for who I was. We were taking photos, laughing, throwing our caps into the air. Across the courtyard, I saw Wood and Ryder standing near the entrance arch.
Both
Of them looked handsome in their suits, but both of them were looking across the crowd, watching me. When my eyes met theirs, I didn't feel anger, nor regret, nor lingering pain. I simply raised my hand, gave them a polite, peaceful final wave of farewell, and turned back to embrace my future, a future where my kindness would never again be mistaken for weakness, and my value would forever be defined by no one else but me.